The 9060 XT and the 5060 Ti are much closer than I expected. One card keeps fighting back in raster, the other answers with better ray tracing performance. And depending on the games you actually play, both of these cards can end up looking like the smarter choice. Let's see what the real gaming performance actually looks like. Starting with Spider-Man 2, the 9060 XT gets the better start. It's slightly ahead at 1080p in raster, then basically tied with the 5060 Ti at 1440p. Ray tracing also favors the 9060 XT here, with a small but clear lead at both resolutions. So at least in this game, AMD starts stronger than expected. Moving to Hogwarts Legacy, the 5060 Ti starts pushing back with a pretty consistent lead in raster at both resolutions. Nothing massive yet, but definitely enough to quickly erase AMD's stronger start from Spider-Man. Ray tracing gives NVIDIA a bit more breathing room, especially at 1080p where the gap becomes noticeably larger. At 1440p, the difference tightens again, but the 5060 Ti still keeps the advantage overall. F124 ends up being one of the closest results in raster, with the 5060 Ti staying only slightly ahead at both 1080p and 1440p. Ray tracing keeps things fairly tight as well. NVIDIA still comes out ahead at 1080, but at 1440 the gap almost completely disappears. Cyberpunk creates one of the bigger shifts in this comparison. In raster, the 5060 Ti keeps a small but consistent lead at both resolutions, continuing the trend we started seeing after Spider-Man. Ray tracing is where NVIDIA finally starts pulling further away. The gap becomes much larger at both 1080 and 1440. And this is probably the clearest example so far of what the 5060 Ti does better. Elden Ring ends up being a surprisingly strong result for the 5060 Ti. It takes a massive lead at both resolutions, creating one of the biggest gaps we've seen in this comparison. Ray tracing tells the same story. The 5060 Ti stays far ahead at both resolutions, and this is probably the clearest example yet of a game heavily favoring NVIDIA. Looking at the overall 25-game raster average, the 5060 Ti finishes about 10% ahead at both 1080p and 1440p. So while NVIDIA does end up taking the overall lead, the difference still stays fairly reasonable considering how close some of the individual games were. And the 10-game ray tracing average gives the 5060 Ti another advantage, although this time the gap is smaller at roughly 5% across both resolutions, but enough to help NVIDIA stay ahead overall. After putting all the results together, the 5060 Ti ends up making a bit more sense overall. It costs slightly more, but you're also getting slightly better performance with only around 20 watts higher TDP. And once you factor in DLSS and NVIDIA's generally preferred upscaling quality, the extra cost becomes pretty easy to justify. The 9060 XT keeps things surprisingly close, but the 5060 Ti still feels like the more complete package overall. Thanks for watching.